Hello and welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you're somewhere comfortable right now.
Definitely. You're going to want to settle in for this one.
Yeah, maybe you've managed to carve out a little pocket of silence in your day or your night.
Especially the night.
Right. Because we are about to go into some territory that really demands it. I'm talking dimmed lights, maybe a warm drink, phone on silent kind of vibes.
It certainly does. We aren't just, skimming the surface of a business book or a news article today.
No, not at all.
We're looking at the architecture of reality itself. It requires a bit of a mental shift, really, a slowing down of the gears.
Exactly. It feels like one of those late-night philosophical chats you have with your college roommate at 2 in the morning.
Oh, yeah. The ones that just melt your brain.
Right, except one of the roommates happens to be a multi-dimensional entity with a lot of opinions.
That is a very accurate way to put it.
But before we unlock the secrets of the universe, we have a couple of quick housekeeping items to take care of, just to keep everything above board.
The fine print.
Always the fine print. First and foremost, a disclaimer for everyone listening. This podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
Which is how it should be.
Exactly. We're here to learn, to explore, and to share. We aren't selling a dogma here. We're exploring a document.
Precisely. And the source of our exploration today is the Seth Material. Specifically, we are zooming in on session 270 from the early sessions, book 6.
This is vintage material, really.
It really is. The date of record for this specific session is June 22, 1966.
Wow, 66.
Yeah. And of course, we need to give proper credit where it's due. This material is published by the New Awareness Network.
Right.
And if what we talk about today sparks something in you, and I have a feeling it might, we highly encourage you to go straight to the source.
Always best to read it yourself.
Exactly. You can find these books and a whole lot more at sethcenter.com/early sessions.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Let's get into the time machine.
I love this part.
It's June 1966. It's a Wednesday night in Elmira, New York, and it is hot.
Oh, stiflingly hot. The kind of heat that makes the air feel thick like you're swimming through soup.
Yeah, exactly. So Jane Roberts, who is the medium for Seth, she's sitting there in her living room. She's smoking a cigarette, trying to relax.
Just a normal Wednesday night.
Right, just a casual Wednesday. Her eyes are getting heavy, but there's a problem. Because of the heat, all the windows in the house are wide open.
Right. And for anyone who has ever done anything even slightly unconventional in a quiet suburban neighborhood,
Oh, you know that anxiety.
you know that specific tension, yeah.
The neighbors are out in the yard. They're right outside. It's a summer evening. Maybe kids are playing. Maybe someone's mowing a lawn or just having a drink on the porch.
And Jane and her husband Rob.
Who Seth calls Joseph, right?
Right, Joseph. They're sitting there knowing that in a few minutes, Jane is going to go into a deep trance.
Her voice is going to completely change.
Yes, she's going to start speaking with the authority. And frankly, the volume of a multidimensional entity named Seth.
And she is terrified that Mrs. Johnson next door is going to hear this booming masculine voice coming out of Jane's living room and just call the police.
Or the asylum.
Right. It adds this layer of very human tension to the whole proceedings. Here they are, about to receive cosmic information about the nature of the soul and the structure of reality.
And they're worried about being overheard.
It grounds the whole thing so beautifully because, we tend to romanticize spiritual channeling as this mountaintop experience.
Monks in a silent cave in the Himalayas.
Exactly. But here, the conduit to cosmic wisdom is worried about neighborhood gossip.
It reminds you that this isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening in a living room in upstate New York, right in the middle of the sweat and the cigarette smoke and the noise of the neighborhood.
And that contrast actually bleeds directly into the content of the session itself.
Yeah.
Because the session begins with fear.
Yes, it does.
Rob, or Joseph, has been carrying around some pretty heavy anxiety.
Right. So Rob has this worry that I think is actually incredibly common for people who start exploring the subconscious or any kind of psychic phenomena. He's worried about the open door policy.
It's the Pandora's box myth, basically.
Exactly. We have this deep cultural programming that tells us the conscious mind is the safe, well-lit living room, and the subconscious is the dark, scary basement.
Yeah, that's the perfect analogy. And Rob is worried that by opening up their subconscious minds to let Seth come through.
Or just by exploring these deeper layers of the psyche in general.
Right. He thinks they might be inadvertently inviting hordes into their home.
Hordes.
Hordes. It sounds so dramatic. Like a zombie movie, but for spirits.
The night of the living subconscious.
It really does. But, it's a valid fear, historically speaking. We are taught to guard our minds.
Very true.
We have this idea that underneath our civilized surface, there's a chaotic, dangerous soup of repressed urges and potentially negative entities just waiting to get out. So Rob is sitting there thinking, are we making a huge mistake here? Are we lowering the drawbridge for the invaders?
So Seth comes through, and he addresses this immediately.
But he doesn't just offer a platitude, right? He doesn't just say, there, don't worry, I'm a good guy.
No, not at all. He approaches it almost like an engineer explaining a safety valve. He introduces the concept of psychological balances.
I love how Seth is always so logical about this stuff. He's not mystical about it. He's systemic.
Highly systemic.
Break that down for us. What does he actually mean by psychological balances?
Well, Seth explains that the personality isn't just a wide-open field where anything can walk in. It is a highly structured system. It has built-in protections, just like a biological system does.
Okay.
He tells them, you need not fear that subconsciously you are going to invite hordes into your home.
So there's a security system.
In a way, yes. But the security system isn't a wall. It's the nature of the self. Seth points out a fundamental contradiction in Rob's thinking. He drops a line here that completely dismantles the fear.
Oh, I know the one.
He says, you are your subconscious self.
You are your subconscious self. That is the ultimate paradox, isn't it?
How so?
Because usually we think of me and my subconscious as two entirely different guys. Me is the guy driving the car, and the subconscious is the guy locked in the trunk who we hope stays quiet.
That is the traditional Western view, the Freudian view even. But Seth is saying, no, that's an illusion.
The basement is also you.
Exactly. The guy in the chair is you. The guy in the trunk is you. It's all one house. You cannot be invaded by yourself.
It's like being afraid that your own hand is going to break into your house.
Or being afraid that your kidneys are plotting against you.
Yeah.
I mean, your kidneys are doing things you aren't consciously aware of. They're filtering blood, balancing fluids, but they're working for you. They're part of the organism.
And Seth is saying the subconscious is exactly the same way. It's not an enemy. It's a vital part of your own structure.
And he says oftentimes what makes no sense to the ego makes good sense to the overall personality.
That's actually very comforting.
It really is. It implies that there is a wisdom operating behind the scenes that the conscious mind, the ego, just doesn't get.
The ego's looking through a keyhole.
Yes, and the overall personality sees the whole room. So what looks like chaos or danger to the ego might actually be a completely necessary movement for the whole self.
And that leads us directly into the core philosophical nugget of this whole session. If the ego is just the guy looking through the keyhole, who's the guy in the room, Seth introduces us to the boss. He calls it the inner ego.
The inner ego. This is a crucial distinction. We're used to talking about the ego and the id or the subconscious, but Seth gives us a new player entirely, the inner ego.
So let's define this for everyone. How is the inner ego different from the ego I use to say, decide which tie to wear or how to order my coffee?
Okay, so the physical ego, the one ordering the coffee, is oriented strictly toward physical reality.
It's the daily driver.
Exactly. It deals with time, space, social interactions, and basic survival in the material world. It's the interface. It's the dashboard.
It's the user interface. It's the icons on the computer screen.
That's it. But the inner ego is the operating system. It is the overseer. It is the director.
So if the physical ego is like the middle manager, then the inner ego is the CEO.
That's a great analogy. Seth describes the inner ego as being self-conscious in the highest meaning of the term.
Which means what exactly?
It means it isn't some murky, unconscious soup. It is highly aware. In fact, it's vastly more aware than our waking self.
Because Seth mentions that the inner ego manages things we completely take for granted, like the nervous system.
Right. Think about that for a second. Really think about the sheer complexity of your own biology right now.
It's staggering.
You have billions of cells replicating. You have a heart beating in a perfect rhythm. You have enzymes breaking down your lunch. You have neurons firing just to process the sound of my voice.
And I'm not doing any of that. At least the I that is talking to you isn't. If I had to consciously manage my heart rate, I'd be dead in 5 seconds. I'd get distracted by a squirrel and forget to beat my heart.
Exactly. It's way too complex for the physical ego to handle. But it's not happening by accident. It's not just random biological noise.
Right.
Seth says the inner ego is aware of the complicated workings of the nervous system and all bodily functions. It is constantly directing the show from behind the curtain.
That is just wild. So
Yeah.
there's a part of me right now sitting here that is smart enough to run my entire biological machine seamlessly. But the part of me talking to you, am totally oblivious to it.
You are oblivious to the mechanics, yes,
Yeah.
but you are the primary beneficiary of the result.
Yeah, that's true.
And the inner ego is also the one that decides on the timing of things. Seth says it knows when to allow subconscious needs and wishes their fulfillment. It knows when to put fulfillment off for a time.
Oh, so it's also doing quality control on our desires.
Ideally, yes. It maintains the stability of the whole package. It prevents the system from overloading emotionally or physically.
There's a term Seth mentions that psychologists use, the subliminal self.
Yes, he acknowledges that conventional psychology has touched on this concept. They call it the subliminal self, but usually in psychology that term implies something below the threshold of consciousness, something a bit passive.
But Seth frames the inner ego as incredibly active.
Oh, absolutely. He says it contains the highest aspirations and capabilities.
It's not the basement, it's the penthouse.
Beautifully put, it is the penthouse. And to help us understand the relationship between this inner ego and our daily waking self, Seth uses an analogy that I think is one of the absolute best in the entire session.
It really is. It's so simple, but it explains everything. The painter analogy.
Yes.
Break this down for us.
I'm going to use his exact words here because it's important. He says, as you create a painting, and the painting is still an aspect of yourself, so it creates the whole personality, which is an aspect of itself.
Okay, let's unpack that because it's a bit dense on the first listen. Yeah. So the inner ego is the painter.
Correct.
And my daily personality, my name, my job, my daily worries, I am the painting.
Yes. You are the creation. Now think about the relationship between a painter and their painting. The painting is real. It has form, it has color, it has a story. It exists in the physical world.
But it is not the painter.
Exactly. The painter is much more than the painting. The painter exists before the painting is made and after the painting is finished. The painter can go on to create 10 other paintings.
But the painting is still an expression of the painter.
Yes. You cannot separate the art from the artist entirely. They are connected.
That kind of blows my mind because I walk around all day thinking, I am the painter. I think I'm the one in charge. I think I'm the one making all the choices. But actually, I'm the canvas.
You are the masterpiece, let's say. But the you that you identify with is just a specific projection of the inner ego into this specific time and place.
Wow.
And Seth says the inner ego dabbles in both your future and your past. It's operating completely outside of the linear time that the painting is stuck in.
It gives a whole new meaning to creativity.
Yeah.
Because if I'm the painting, then who is doing the creating when I sit down and paint a picture or write a song?
Seth addresses that directly. He says the inner ego is definitely the I of your creative activity.
So when you get into that flow state,
Like you feel like something is coming through you rather than from you, that is the inner ego taking the brush.
that explains why so many artists say, I don't know where it came from, it just appeared, or why you can look back at something you wrote years ago and think, wow, I was smarter than I thought.
Precisely. The physical ego can't explain it because the physical ego didn't do it alone. The physical ego just held the pen.
And this connection to the inner ego isn't just for art, is it? It's for dreaming, too. Seth talks about how the inner ego operates in the dream state.
He mentions awake-seeming dreams, which I assume he means what we would call lucid dreams today.
Or vivid astral projections.
Yes. He says when your perceptions in a dream seem exceedingly clear, that is the inner ego operating directly.
I've had that happen.
Yeah.
Usually dreams are kind of fuzzy, right? Like looking through muddy water. The logic is weird. The text changes when you try to read a book in a dream.
Right, very blurry.
But every once in a while, boom, it's in high definition. It's clearer than real life.
Seth would say that is the moment the director steps onto the stage. The inner ego is the I of your dreams. It's the part of you that realizes, hey, I'm not in Kansas anymore, and can navigate that dream landscape with full awareness.
So we have this inner ego. It's the boss. It's the painter. It's the dreamer. It's the biological engineer.
It wears a lot of hats.
It really does. But here is where it gets really interesting and honestly a little scary, depending on how attached you are to your current setup.
Oh, the big question.
Yeah. What happens when the painting is finished? What happens when we die?
This is the survival question. And Seth takes a very fascinating, very specific stance here. He argues that our common traditional view of the afterlife is fundamentally flawed.
Because most people think, I die, and then the guy who likes pizza and hates traffic and roots for the Knicks wakes up in heaven.
Right. We expect the physically oriented ego to continue exactly as it is, just in a new cloud-based location. We think death is just moving house.
And Seth disagrees.
Seth says if that were true, it would be a complete disaster.
But why? I like the guy who likes pizza. Why is surviving as him a disaster?
Because that guy is incredibly limited. Seth says if only the physically oriented ego survived, very little indeed would survive at all.
Very little.
Think about it. Your physical ego forgets 90% of what happens to you.
What do you mean by that?
Do you remember what you had for lunch on a Tuesday 3 years ago? Do you remember the specific conversation you had with a cashier in 2015?
Not a clue. It's completely gone.
Do you remember the exact specific feeling of the wind on your face when you were 5 years old swinging on a swing set?
Probably not. No.
The physical ego filters out almost everything just to focus on survival right now. It is designed to be narrow. It is essentially an amnesiac. Wow. Okay.
So if that filtered, forgetful version of you is the only thing that survives death, you are losing the vast, vast majority of your own experience.
That is a deeply depressing thought. It's like saving a low-resolution thumbnail of a photo and permanently deleting the high-res original.
That is a perfect metaphor. Seth actually calls this kind of limited survival as shallow as a paper cutout.
As shallow as a paper cutout. That phrase really stuck with me. It's so visceral and visual. A two-dimensional version of a three-dimensional being.
He's really pushing against the idea that the little self is the real self. He says relying solely on the physical ego for survival would be a sham. It would be a tragedy.
So what's the alternative then? What is true survival, according to Seth?
True survival involves the full integration of the personality. The survival personality, as Seth calls it, drops the outer face. The mask we wear for the physical world is no longer needed.
So the painting gets reabsorbed into the painter. In a way, yes, but the painting isn't destroyed. The memories of the physical ego are kept. Seth says the memories of the physically oriented ego take their place with memories that were once subconscious.
Ah, I see. So the wall comes down. Right now I have conscious memories, and then I have a bunch of subconscious stuff that I can't access. In the survival state, the wall dissolves and I get access to everything.
Exactly. You become the whole self. You get the high-res photo back. You remember the pizza, sure, but you also remember the dreams you forgot, the psychic impulses you ignored, the deep biological wisdom your cells held. You become the director, not just the actor.
That sounds vastly better than being a paper cutout.
Hmm.
But it's also a huge shift in identity. I guess that's why death is such a big deal. It's not just moving house. It's waking up from the role you were playing.
And that profound shift in identity comes with a shift in how reality itself is perceived. Which brings us to the next major philosophical pivot in the session.
The reality of thoughts.
Yeah.
This part is so trippy.
Yeah.
Seth says, to him, meaning the surviving personality, all realities are psychological realities. A thought as real as a chair. In fact, much more real.
We really have to pause on this because in our daily world, we have a very strict hierarchy of what is real.
Right. Physical objects, chairs, rocks, cars are real with a capital R.
And thoughts, feelings, daydreams are not real. They are ephemeral. They don't matter as much.
Just in your head. That's the phrase we use to dismiss things all the time. Oh, don't worry, it's just in your head.
Right. But Seth is flipping that hierarchy entirely upside down. He's saying that in the broader reality, the thought is the primary object.
So the physical chair.
It's just a temporary, sluggish manifestation of the thought of a chair. It's clunky, it's slow. The thought is the enduring reality.
So if I'm a spirit or a survival personality and I think of a chair, that chair is completely solid to me.
Yes. The barrier between internal and external is gone. Your internal landscape becomes your external landscape.
That sounds amazing, but also kind of chaotic. If every stray thought becomes a sofa, my living room would be a total mess.
Well, remember, the inner ego is a highly disciplined creator. It's not just generating random garbage. But Seth uses this concept to explain something very practical.
Oh, right. Why it's so hard for the living to communicate with the dead.
Yes. He talks about psychological frameworks.
He says communication suffers because we are existing in fundamentally different frameworks. We are totally obsessed with physical facts.
Where is the money hidden? What time is it? What color was the car?
We want data. We want hard proof in our language.
But the survival personality is living in a world of psychological intensity where feelings and thoughts are the actual landscape. They aren't worried about the clock. They're immersed in the reality of their own being.
It's like trying to explain the color blue to a spreadsheet.
Or like trying to have a conversation where one person is speaking in the language of architecture and the other is speaking in the language of music. The translation is incredibly difficult because the very definitions of reality have changed.
That makes a lot of sense. We're always looking for proof in physical terms, and they're operating in a reality where physical terms are just rudimentary symbols for thoughts.
Exactly. And speaking of proof,
Oh man, yes. Speaking of proof, the session takes a hard left turn right about here.
it really does. We go from the nature of the immortal soul and the structure of reality
To
to
a lost scroll and a sore throat.
this is the in-stream material.
Tell us about this. Who exactly is Dr. Instream?
Dr. Instream appears to be a researcher or a contact of theirs that they were trying to get psychic impressions for. This was often how Seth proved himself in the early days. He would give highly specific data about people Jane and Rob barely knew to show that he could access information non-locally.
It's the psychic detective segment of the show.
It is. And the details are so aggressively mundane, which oddly makes them more convincing.
Right, he doesn't say Dr. Instream has contemplated the destiny of nations. He says the object seems to be a scroll, something rolled up.
A metallic or silver color, used vertically or horizontally.
And then he gets into the guy's internal decision-making process. He says there was a turnabout. Dr. Instream changed a decision to the opposite one, and Seth, being the highly opinionated entity he is, adds his own commentary.
He says, I believe that he should have kept to his original course.
I love that Seth gives unsolicited life advice right along with the psychic reading.
Here is your lost object, and by the way, you're making a terrible mistake.
And then there's the health issue. A roll of string, representing tying things together, and a throat issue on the left side, possibly involving the wife.
And a master lunch.
Yes, a master lunch involving a meeting of several people. But why does Seth do this? Why spend valuable cosmic bandwidth on someone's lunch meeting?
It's a demonstration of range. It shows that the inner ego in Seth isn't just floating in the clouds philosophizing. It has direct access to the nitty-gritty details of physical life.
It grounds the high-flying concept.
It really validates the philosophy. If he can accurately describe a silver scroll in a guy's pocket miles away, maybe we should listen to what he says about the nature of death.
It's the wax-on, wax-off of psychic training.
It is. And it also serves as a crucial test for Jane. She has to switch gears from channeling heavy philosophical concepts to receiving very specific visual images. It's a real workout for her abilities.
Speaking of Jane and the domestic reality of this whole session, we absolutely have to talk about the comedy here. Because for all the seriousness, there are moments in this transcript that are just straight up funny.
It's the sitcom element of the Seth Material.
First, we have the nightmare.
Right. Jane had a vivid nightmare the night before this session. Apparently, it was so bad that Rob had to physically shake her awake.
Which is terrifying in itself, waking up to someone shaking you.
It is. And naturally, they want Seth to explain it. What did it mean? Was it a premonition?
And Seth basically says, calm down.
He reassures them there is no personal danger. But then he says something really interesting. He says, Ruburt, that's his name for Jane, is blocking me.
Jane is blocking the explanation.
Yes. Even though she wants to know consciously, some part of her subconscious is putting up a wall. So Seth says, we shall insert the material during one of next week's sessions.
It's like when a web page won't load. Buffering. Try again later.
Exactly. It shows that this isn't a perfect frictionless stream. The medium's own psychology plays a huge active role.
But the real comedic gold of this session is the cat.
The mystery of the cat's gender.
So, Rob and Jane have a cat. They named it Catherine.
Because they reasonably assumed it was a girl.
Right. But apparently, as Catherine grew, suspicions arose.
Certain anatomical evidence began to suggest otherwise. So Rob, taking full advantage of having an all-knowing entity on the line, asks the ultimate question.
Is Catherine a male or female cat?
I just love this context so much. You have a direct line to a multidimensional teacher who exists outside of time and space, and you're asking him to sex your cat.
And Seth's response is just perfect. He doesn't just answer them. He gives them pure sass.
He really does.
He says, surely you can find out the answer to this question for yourself.
It's the cosmic equivalent of telling them to Google it.
It's so dry. I'm here to teach you how to create your own reality, not to look under your cat's tail.
But then there's a little twist to it. Even though Seth refuses to say the word, Jane receives a psychic impression right then and there.
She gets the answer.
She gets the definite feeling that Catherine is a male.
So the cat is a boy named Catherine.
A boy named Catherine. And Seth, in his own way, confirmed it by refusing to answer, implying it was too obvious to waste cosmic words on.
It just humanizes them so much. It reminds you that spiritual growth happens right in the middle of real life. You're dealing with profound truths, terrifying nightmares, heat waves, and confusing pets all at the exact same time.
That is the texture of reality. It's
Yeah.
not one or the other. It's the sacred and the profane mixed together.
So looking back at this session 270 on, what are the big takeaways for you if we had to boil it down for the listener?
I think there are four main pillars here. First is safety. We are safe. The subconscious isn't a monster closet. It's a self-regulating system with deep balances. You don't need to fear your own mind.
That's a huge one. Stop being afraid of yourself.
Second is identity. We are vastly more than we think. The you that is listening to this right now is just the painting. The real you, the inner ego, is the painter. You have resources and wisdom you aren't consciously aware of, but they are running the show.
I am the painting, but I'm connected to the painter.
Third is survival. True survival is expansive. We don't just scrape by as our little limited physical egos. We graduate, we integrate, we become the whole self, recovering all those memories and experiences we thought were lost to time.
No paper cutouts.
No paper cutouts. And finally, the nature of reality. Thoughts are things. In the bigger picture, a thought is more solid than a chair. We are creators, constantly molding energy into experience, whether we realize it or not.
It's so empowering. It puts the responsibility back on us, sure, but it also gives us the credit. We are doing something incredibly amazing just by being here and creating this life.
We are creating a masterpiece day by day.
Well, my brain is officially bent, but in a good way.
That is always the goal.
If you want to unbend your brain or bend it even further, please go check out these books. Visit sethcenter.com/the early sessions. There is so much more in there than we could ever cover in an hour.
We've barely scratched the surface today.
I really want to leave you with that image of the paper cutout. As you go about your week, ask yourself, are you living as the cutout? Are you just reacting to the surface stuff? Or can you feel the painter behind you? Can you feel that deeper, wiser part of yourself that is actually holding the brush?
Connect with the painter. That's where the real magic is.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next deep dive.
Good night, everyone.
And stay cool.